Hello, everyone. I'm Tracy Derwin, and thank you for joining me today. In today's video, I'm going to be going over the bill that was recently passed in California in response to the LA fires and point out some similarities between what is going on or what has been going on in LA to what happened in Maui. So as I was researching this, I was just so taken aback by how similar these two events are. It's just uncanny. And I'm going to start out with the bill. So the one in California is it's SB 549. And this is very similar to the bill that was almost passed in Maui called SB 3381. And I'm going to go over a little bit right here. And more recently, there was so much public outcry that it has been put on hold. So it's been paused. So hopefully when they revisit this, they will make some significant changes, but I'm not sure. So one of the big, parts that are not going over well with the residents of the Palisades, I know for sure, is that 40% of the new housing is reserved for homeless. As many of you know, there's a big homeless problem here in Southern California. And so I guess they're kind of using this as a way to justify these new changes that they're going to be doing. But the thing that is really similar to Maui is that this bill establishes a resilient building authority. And this is a new entity with sweeping powers to purchase fire damaged properties, overriding zoning and directing taxpayer funds towards housing mandates. And the bill SB 3381 in Maui was similar in that it was going to allow 9 unelected members to make decisions on the redevelopment of West Maui. I'll put a little bit more info here. The senator that introduced this is Senator Allen, and I believe he oversees the Santa Monica area as well as the Palisades. Okay, and I'll put a link to the video I did about SB 3381. I'm not going to rehash it here. I did a number of videos previously to help bring awareness so that the bill didn't go through. So I'll bring up a little bit here. And this is also very similar to what happened in Maui. You see these words like resilient, transit-oriented development. Those are very common globalist terms. And also there's a big emphasis on affordable housing. In Maui, they called it like workforce housing. They kind of change up the wording a little bit, but they leave a lot the same. And here's the part about the 40% that has to be put towards homeless housing. So here it doesn't say homeless, it says for households with incomes below 60% of the area median income. So I don't know if they changed that in the bill because that's not the same as homeless. It's just low income. So there's a big difference there. I hope they clear that up before they reintroduce this bill. Okay, and here's the part about the transit-oriented development, and that is referring to the use of public transportation like buses, metro. So what they're trying to do is make it unreasonable to own a car in Southern California and kind of force people to use public transportation as well as bikes and walking. This is really huge. The bottom line in red, no more than one parking space is allowed for each residential unit. Now, if you live in LA, you'll understand that one car is probably not enough, or one parking space is usually not enough per unit or per house or townhouse or apartment. If it's like a 3-bedroom and there are 3 adults living there, it's unreasonable that they could get by on 1 car. I mean, some do, but oftentimes that is just not enough. Okay, and also they're using, the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions as a justification to reduce automobile trips. And see this top red line that says to and from the district, that really scares me because it's kind of like Hunger Games, like, creating these districts within the city, and they might start preventing the leaving and entering of these districts. And right here, they're saying that they're trying to reduce the use of cars to and from this district. So there's a lot of things in here that are, to me, very scary. And again, so eerily similar to the bill from Maui. And the reason that might be the case is, and I'm going to play this clip of Newsom. This is maybe a week after the fire started, a week or 2. I'm not sure actually, but the fire was still going on when he made this statement about how he is talking to the governor of Hawaii, which is Governor Green.
I was just talking to Josh Green, the governor of down in Hawaii, who had some ideas around some land use concerns he has around speculators coming in, buying up properties, and the like. So we're already working with our legal teams to move those things forward.
So I'm just going to make a guess that this bill might have been inspired by 3381, which was presented in Maui. What Governor Green may not have told Governor Newsom is that bill was a complete failure. There was so much backlash, and it didn't necessarily get voted against. What happened was one of the state senators, Kurt Favela, asked for amendments to the bill. One of those amendments, which I think was a big problem for the people supporting the bill, was that the members of this Lele group were going to be elected officials instead of appointed. Before, it would have been appointed by the governor. And so I think when that became part of the bill, it kind of just died. And I'm assuming they're going to bring up some sort of revised bill and try to pass it. So far, I haven't heard of anything, but I think they're kind of trying to go around it in other ways. But meanwhile, what happens is the redevelopment or the rebuilding of these areas get basically halted. Lahaina, there's a big problem. There's very little rebuilding. I think a handful of houses have been rebuilt, but there's certainly a strong push to hold off on rebuilding. And I have a clip here of a few days ago of what the Palisades looks like now.
Well, as far as progress is concerned, I see no new foundation, no new construction at all. Zero. No foundation, no framing.
So as you could see there, no rebuilding. And something that I noticed is that a lot of the trees are still standing, but the structures are gone. And I think this is what is to be expected, because the officials are waiting to get laws passed so that they could rebuild the Palisades as well as Altadena with the new globalist agenda in mind. All right. And then I'm going to play this other topic that happened in Maui, and that was the lack of water. So in Lahaina, the firefighters didn't have water in the hydrants to put out the fire. And that happened as well in LA. And here is someone discussing how he found out that the firefighters were given orders to not use these water tanks, which were full and working at the time. And I want to give this guy credit. Leo Zaki on Instagram posted this.
Running off of these green water tanks that are right there.
Yeah, they never drew from those.
They didn't. Wait, it's right. Look how close it is.
Yeah, no, they didn't draw from those.
Right there. That is a big water tank, and that's
there's two water tanks, Leo.
There's two of them, and they supply gallons of water here to this neighborhood.
As well as for, I heard, Marina Del Rey, there's a big pipe underground going there.
From here?
Yeah, and I thought that's unusual.
Wow, that's a long way to go.
So the firemen told me that we were ordered to let them burn down.
I mean, the fact that you're saying they didn't even draw from that at all?
And about a week after, I'm walking my dogs in the morning. You know, I walk them during the day, and I see a white SUV truck with California water or something on the side of it. I forget what it was. So I flagged him down, and I said, hey, what are you doing here? He said, oh, I'm in charge of those green reservoirs. I said, really? I said, were they full? He said, they were full. I said, why didn't the firemen have access to them? He put his hands up, I don't know. And I asked the firemen outside of my house at 9:30, 10 in the evening, there's a hydrant right here. Why don't you water my front so my gates don't burn? Well, we have low water pressure. We don't have any more water. Fire was on Monday, Tuesday, so he serviced them Thursday, Friday. And I said, maybe the pumps were burned out. He says, no, no, no. He's in charge of servicing. They were perfectly serviced and cleaned. Everything was working. So, you know, there's no excuse for them not having access to water there. This was mismanaged, and I'm sure there's a lot of criminal elements in the city higher-ups that, and you know, I read that the mayor's emails were all deleted. There's no more cell phone back and forth.
Typical practice.
How do you get rid of evidence? Deleted.
Typical.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we've seen this with Hillary Clinton. We've seen this with a lot of other very scandalous politicians. So using the same old tricks, which means clearly there's foul play at hand. You guys are running.
Okay, so the official story is the reservoirs were empty, and that's why they couldn't put out the fire in the Palisades. But it seems like there's a lot more to the story. And even in Maui, it's still unclear why they didn't have water for Lahaina. All right, and then I'm going to point out this other one. This is kind of a long clip. I'll play most of it. And this happened, this one was so similar to what I found in Maui, and that is the, I guess, lack of clarity whether the power company turned the power off. In both situations, the power company said we turned the power off very early. And when the fire was going, there was no power. So that's not how this fire started. But there's evidence that there were energized power lines and the homes did have electricity. So this guy is reporting on the Palisades fire.
The biggest bombshells out of this, we've all been focusing on what ignited the Palisades fire. This lawsuit alleges that there wasn't just one ignition. There were multiple at different times. Because evidently, LADWP did not de-energize their lines. Not only does it create a potential hazard for more ignitions, but it's a safety hazard for firefighters. They're not going to be operating underneath power lines unless they know that they're de-energized. LADWP apparently said that they de-energized the lines, but this image shows during the fire that evening that there are still lights on. So clearly there is still electricity running through those lines. The lawsuit alleges that there was no fire in this area that evening. Then all of a sudden they see what appears to be an arcing event under the power lines. That then threw hot slag into the brush below and started a new fire behind the original Palisades fire. And then after that, you have a bunch of fire ripping through here, and then you've got homes in the Highlands got burned down. There's more evidence of this. Here later in the evening, you see sparks coming off of what looks like a transformer on a power pole. Here's another frame grab from video. You see multiple explosions of hot slag. This is very damning, if it's true, that these lines were still energized. You can see, according to this Instagram post, that these crews had to vacate their work. Now, these hand crews are trying to secure an edge of the fire that's cold enough that humans can go walk up to it and do that hand crew work. They're not going to be going up against, 50-foot flame lengths, maybe 2 or 3 foot, right? So this is an area where you actually have a chance of locking this thing down. They had to step away because those lines were energized above them. Now, there seems to be a lot of confusion because LADWP insists that they de-energize the lines, but here's a bit of a smoking gun. Apparently, one of the operators who allegedly they claim had de-energized the lines, for some reason, changed the log entry time that would indicate when they went to the substation and actually physically, manually de-energize those lines. Now, the order or the request to go and de-energize the lines came early in the afternoon. For some reason, the logs show that this technician did not enter until hours later, but then that time was changed. Why was it changed? We'll have to wait for the rebuttal, but this is, it's disturbing. Here's a fire under a power pole. So it's alleged that this was created by hot slag from the power lines that were still energized. This then went over into the mobile home park. It's actually where my cousin used to live, and nuked everything. The other thing is they were supposed to have replaced all of these wooden power poles years ago. They started this work back in 2019 to replace them with metal poles that are less vulnerable to wildfire damage. They stopped in 2019. Because they bulldozed over some protected plants. So that work never got done, and we're left with those wooden poles, which, as you can see, did not fare well during the fire. This is a big potential issue. One of the biggest bonds.
So what he was saying right there, and that is Gabriel Mann. I just found that clip yesterday, and it looks like he made a movie about the LA fire. But that is just so similar to what happened in Lahaina. The power company said we turned it off, really early in the morning, yet there's evidence of power still on. And I did hear some excuses about the Palisades area. The people were using generators. I personally know someone whose power was on, their security system and the camera were on, while the area was getting burned, and they don't have a generator. So I've heard that from a number of people that their power did not go off, at least not for a long time, at least not during the time that the Palisades was burning. So that is just very suspicious as to why the power was still on, even though the company says that they turned it off. So something that I've been thinking regarding the power, being turned off, yet we see evidence of the power on, is that these technologies that may have been used have an effect on the power grid. So maybe they did turn the power off, but another source was affecting the power. That could be a possibility. But again, until someone comes forward and says that was the case, we might never know. But that was a very very uncanny similarity. There's some other things, but those are the ones that I really wanted to point out. And I will continue. I kind of got off of the LA fire recovery, but I'm starting to follow it more closely now. And there was a guy that I knew who he was, Spencer Pratt, and he's on TikTok and Instagram. And he lost his home during the Palisades Fire, and so did his parents. And he's been very outspoken. His videos are getting millions of views, and he is really pushing the truth out about what's happening. And he's been getting criticized in the LA Times, but he's really doing a great job. He was on a reality show a long time ago. I did watch him during that time, and I have seen him in person, but he kind of, faded off the radar. But it's like this event is like, bringing him back into the spotlight for a very good reason. And I'll probably be showing his videos more going forward. And he has a lot. I will link his IG in the description. But that's what I want to share today. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so before you leave, and like, comment, and please share this video so we can let as many people know what's really happening here in LA. And I hope this kind of illustrates how Lahaina was the blueprint for LA. And as time goes on, it's becoming more and more obvious. So thank you guys so much for being here, and I'll see you all soon. Bye.